Hello and welcome to Chess Book Reviews 125. Today I want to look at the life briefly of the Dutch Grandmaster Max Euwe. Euwe became, almost to his own surprise, and certainly to those who followed the career of such as Capablanca or Alekhine, became world champion in 1935. And Alekhine, who is probably the best thing that ever happened to Alekhine, because in order to try and get back his title, which he succeeded in doing, Alekhine must have burnt so much midnight oil that he virtually, slaked every oil well from France to his native Russia and back again. I've got this book, which isn't really the center of what I'm going to say, but nevertheless, here we are. And if you look at the cover, you notice one thing about it. It hasn't got a picture of Euwe. And he wasn't perhaps the most famous of world champions. And the books that he's written, and I'm told about 26. I haven't got all 26. Of course I don't. But I've got a small number. And I've got an even smaller number here today to show you. This is written by B.H. Wood, that knew him a little. And I'm sure, as with so many others, had great respect for Euwe in the realm of chess analysis. His books, if they have any weaknesses, and I think they do, one is that they do seem to have dated rather heavily. And secondly, he was in the habit of collaborating with a number of other players, some of whom were Dutch masters. And I begin to wonder how much of his work he, in fact, originally, came from his quill. But that's as may be. I'm not saying that he was guilty of plagiarized. He wasn't. Being plagiarized, he wasn't. In 1935, he challenged Alekhine for the world title, and he beat him. In 1937, to the surprise of nobody, perhaps, least of all Max Euwe, he lost back. And he never challenged again so strongly. He did play in the 1953 candidates, I think I'm right in saying, and won a spectacular game, which is very often quoted against Geller. But for the rest of the time, he was on the sidelines of the competitive game. He likened chess to a volcano, and he said, "I put my toes over the rim of the volcano, and I can look down in, but I can't go any nearer." When he became president of FIDE, of course, the hardest thing in the world was to control, without snuffing out, a certain Robert James Fisher, and it's massively to his credit that he managed to do that. B.H. Wood writes here. He contributed the chapter in the Edward Winter book I was just showing you. He says that Euwe is as active as ever at 75, and he said, "I haven't got a single free hour in the next 10 days. Two closely written pages of interesting reminiscence followed." In other words, he was very disciplined. As a child, as a boy, I wrote to Euwe asking him about the strongest players of all time, and he wrote back saying that as president of FIDE, he was in no position to, sort one from t'other. But he said that he thought that the strongest players were alive today. So that was a nice balanced answer, and I wish I kept the letter, but I didn't. Once again, this book, World Chess Champions, edited by E.G. Winter, was published by Pergamon, and I often use it, and it is quite good. Now, the next one is an old friend, From My Games, 1920 to 1937. Just going to have a little drink, sorry. Yes, 1920, obviously it was between the wars. This is translated with an introduction by Fred Reinfeld. There's some doubt about certain books by Reshevsky that whether, in fact, and Frank Marshall, whether in fact Fred Reinfeldt wrote them. I can assure you he didn't like this, but he did give it more than the once over, and he translated it, which is quite something. It contains, let's see how many games, I don't know. Let's have a look. It contains 75 games, and the last of them is where he loses to Alekine. That's no disgrace. Anybody, including Capablanca or the very young Botvinnik, could have done similarly. After the war, Alekine was probably a shadow of his former self, and in fact, he never got round to playing Botvinnik. He was due to play him in London, in fact, but the BCF, as it then was, pulled out of it when it was discovered how much, in theory anyway, collaboration had involved Alekine. Anyway, that's a completely different matter. Here we have Euwe playing at Nottingham 1936, the tournament oft mentioned, isn't it? I'll just show you here with the descriptive notation and double columns. Perhaps a little bit lacking in diagrams by modern standards. Fairly straightforward analysis. Well, there's a diagram, and you can get a nice flavour of the queen ending. There you go. Euwe was born in 1901. Reshevsky was born in 1911, and played chess almost from the moment he was off the potty. And they both lived to ripe old ages and did an astronomical amount for the game. And I honour their memory. I mean, you should, and I do. Here's a comment with 1 pawn to king 3 against pawn to king 4. In other words, I have fared disastrously against Alekine in the past. Not that I regard the French defence in any less favourable a light as a consequence. Again, a very balanced comment. And I'm sure that if anybody had turned to Euwe and said, you know, can you help me? Or what do you think of this? Or, you know, could you sort out a dispute over the chessboard? I bet he would have done if he could have done. Here he is playing in 1937 against Willie Winter in the match that there was to. I went to one of the. In fact, I think I went to the last one between England and Holland, the Netherlands, I'm told to call it. And this is his game against William Winter, who lived near me, actually. I didn't know him, of course I didn't, but he did. So, yes, here he is playing on the continent, Stuttgart, and here he is black back playing Alekine, which must have been an enormous psychological undertaking, like climbing a mountain. Here he is at 1937 Olympiad International Team Tournament, it says in brackets, playing with Kindness. So that was a pretty tough call, wasn't it? And here he is playing in an exhibition game, Sallow Floor, the Wanderer Sallow Floor. There we are. From My Games by Max Euwe. Just as a little advert, please like and subscribe down below if you like what you're hearing. I need the membership, I need the support, the encouragement. Now, this is a book I don't rate that highly, but it is quite unusual and is very nicely presented. It says Max Euwe and Walter Meiden. Now, it has to be admitted that Walter Meiden is not a household name in the chess world, but he clearly, what they have done is he has gone through some games played in the mid-1970s, Walter Meiden, and he's written notes to them, describing them, not necessarily explaining every nook and cranny, because perhaps you don't need that, or perhaps you knew it anyway, or perhaps it's too detailed anyway. And then I think Euwe probably with a fine-tooth comb went through Meiden's script and said, you know, you're wrong about that, you're right about that, you're repeating yourself there, blah, blah, blah. So the two players, Dutchmen, I suppose, brought out the best in each other. And although this is rather a fond book, because it was given to me by my friend Sue Fraser from Darlington, and for that reason alone, I like it. I don't love it. As I say, it describes games, but I don't think it necessarily is going to turn you into the next Karpov. And obviously now the games are, 14, 50 years ago. There's others in this series with Euwe and Meiden, which you might prefer more. I'm not sure. But it has an unusual cover, and the inside is nicely set out. Let me show you. There we are. Single columns, plenty of space, white space, which you might like to write something in, or just, in other words, it's relaxed. It goes through 25 games. And the last game is between Furman, who was Karpov's trainer, and Leonid Stein, who was one of the strongest Soviet grandmasters, who died young. He died in 1973. 4 games by Fischer, 4 games by Spassky, 2 by Karpov, 2 by Mecking, 2 by Petrosian, and 2 by Lajos Portish. There's the book. Chess master, who is Meiden, and Grandmaster, who obviously is Euwe. Now the last, for the moment anyway, really is lesser known. This is by the 2 Linder families, father and son, Isaac and Vladimir Linder. It says 5th world chess champion, Max Euwe, and there he is in the inset photo. He said he was a first-rate class arbiter, author, and diplomat. He certainly was. As I say, he wrote about 26 books. The notes to the games are by Carsten Müller, who you may associate, as I do, rather more with endgame books. But he is a very, very strong player in his own right. Presumably a grandmaster, I'm not sure. Müller. Possibly he is, I don't know. And this is not presented chronologically. It is done in sections, so matches, tournaments, and opponents. Actually, Chapter 3, play and novelties. So novelties and the openings, I suppose. Unusual moves. A little cartoon there, just a little sketch up in the corner. See it? That's rather good, isn't it? Between Alekhine and Euwe, which I mentioned earlier. And here's Euwe again. And as you can see, with the specs and the short hair, he's rather a straight-laced gentleman. Nothing wrong with that. Serious-minded. If he was your next door neighbour, you wouldn't even know he was there, and you might think he was a local doctor or some such. Here he is in 1946, winning a tournament. There's the cross table. Not many cross tables in this book, but there's 1 or 2. There we are, won by Euwe with Szabo, the Hungarian, second. And B.H. Wood and George Thomas bringing up the rear with the well-known author Zornosko Borovsky. And there's Paul List on number 5. You didn't expect to see him there, did you? I think that's what's known as a flash in the pan. Here is Euwe analysing with Reshevsky, with Botvinnik looking on. Sorry, Hans Kmoch, who wrote Pornpad, didn't he? And his little daughter, whose name I cannot pronounce, so I will not. Euwe's little daughter looking on. I think Euwe had several daughters and was interested in, he took up boxing for the sake of just keeping himself in trim. And he was also something of an aviator. It's hard to believe that Alekhine was interested in canoeing. But for Euwe to be an aviator, that was really quite something. He's probably stealing his nerve. Believe you me, it was frightening to play Alekhine. It's quite small text, which you might not like. My eyesight gets worse by the day. But it doesn't. It's nicely printed. As you can see, 3 diagrams on one page and 2 on the adjacent page. Can't do that, can you? This is published by Anna Russell, I think. Russell Enterprises, Inc., who are in America. And it was published in 2017, so it's been around for a while. I quite recommend it if you want to study the games of Euwe. At the back, it has a list of other books published and all the openings with a lot of Queen's Gambits, both declined and accepted, listed, and all his opponents. Lots of games against Alekhine and Capablanca, Keres, and Emmanuel Lasker. In other words, quality is assured. Here's a breakdown of all his results, some of which perhaps in the late 1940s and 50s became a bit mediocre, but for all of that, only mediocre for a grandmaster. Not mere mortals. Anyway, this was written after Max Euwe had died. As I say, and I'm happy to repeat, Linda and Linda, not a double act that is well known. Thank you very much for your time. Please like and subscribe. Goodbye.